Hey, what's happening, guys? Vaco here with another Webflow tutorial on semantic HTML in Webflow. Now, what is semantic HTML or semantic tags or semantic elements? So, semantic means translates to the meaning. The meaning of the word semantic is basically something that has meaning, and in the latest version of HTML5, they have added these semantic tags for one reason, to give the code a bit more information and a bit more meaning on what it is for. For example, if you're very familiar with how we build websites in Webflow, right? We add div blocks usually. Most of the time we're adding sections, containers that are showed as sections and containers inside Webflow, but in reality, the code that it's generating is just a div block. Webflow automatically doesn't generate semantic code. We have to assign it ourselves. So what happens is, on the left side, we have this usual way we build in Webflow if you do not apply semantic tags to it. And all the code that you have there is just going to be div, 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 and we don't know what's the for a regular user who is browsing website, this doesn't really matter because they're not going to see it. They understand the content visually. But semantic code is for somebody, usually it's for machines, because machines do not understand visual cues, but they are reading the code. And machines here include two different sort of machines. One is for SEO, which is search engine optimization, and that's for Google and Bing and all those search engine crawlers that come to your website and they're trying to understand content of your website. And the second type of machines are accessibility machines. These are like screen readers. These are screen readers used by people who have some sort of, let's say, if they are blind, if they have difficulty to interacting with a mouse or something like that. Usually screen readers, like for example, most of the computers, Mac has its default screen reader, helps you navigate through the site just by hearing, and will tell you what you're doing and where you are at the website, and it will help you navigate through it and will read out the content for you. So these are mainly two reasons why we want to use semantic HTML and semantic tags. So if we apply semantic tags, now the website looks like this. So we have a header that has some content inside, which is header of the page. Then we have a navigation usually inside, right? Then we have an article or a main. If this would, for example, a blog post, which will have an article inside. And then there's a figure represents the image, and there is a footer. And now when a screen reader reads this page through the semantic tags, it can better understand what's going on the page, because screen readers don't really understand the page visually, right? They have to sort of go through the code and make some guesses on what's inside the code. So when you make semantic HTML, when you apply semantic tags to your Webflow elements, you will make it more SEO friendly and more accessibility friendly for accessibility tools like screen readers. So one way, let's, for example, look at this website, and there is this Chrome extension that I'm using, which is called Landmark Navigation. I will link it inside the description. So this extension can help us see the page sort of the way a screen reader would see, because screen readers, they define content of a web page usually in landmarks that the user then can interact with. And if you enable this, it will give you different landmarks on our page that it sort of automatically decided that it's a landmark and it's important group of content that user can interact with or needs to know as a separate thing. So this is now website without HTML tags applied to it currently, and this is what automatically, obviously if you do not apply HTML text, the SEO and accessibility tools, they will still parse your website. It's not going to be, they won't be blinded by it. It's just to help them to give them a bit more information on our content. They'll still go through, I've tested this out with my screen reader on my computer, and then it will still go through every single content, every single link inside. They will read out every single heading and so on, and will let you navigate through every content on the website. But when I applied HTML tag, semantic tags to it, the information was a bit more useful and was telling me where am I at. For example, right now it has found a banner, which makes sense, right? Inside the banner shows a navigation. This navigation is detected because Webflow by default does apply to the nav menu, does apply a tag of nav. And here's a cheat list, cheat sheet for the tags that are inside Webflow available, the HTML5 semantic tags. We have a header, footer, nav, main, and I'll explain each one as we apply. Nav in this case is the navigation links. This can be not just on the nav bar, but it can be inside the footer or sidebar or wherever you're going to have navigation links. You can always use this. And it's a good idea to use it. So because it has now applied, now it can detect it. If we didn't, it would not label this as a navigation. Nothing here, as you can see, it doesn't understand what's the purpose of this content. Then it found this region, which is a carousel region. I don't know if it's the tool, the extension itself that is finding it, or there is some sort of, let's check if there is some sort of a tag applied here, but I doubt. So somehow it has deduced that it is a carousel region, perhaps based on some JavaScript that is applied by default inside Webflow. So this is a good idea, right? Because when the user knows that they are inside the carousel, they will understand better how to interact with it. And footer, nothing. It doesn't show us that this is a footer, doesn't show us that there is navigations inside. So quite unhelpful in this case. So let's start by applying some of the semantic tags to our home page. Now, you can use this image as a guide and this cheat sheet, but also the Webflow actually does provide explanation on each of them here. So header, it specifies a header for a document or a section. There is many different ways to go about it. There is usually one definition is that you use a header for not just for the page, but use it for a header of any sort of section that you're going to define. So in this case, we can use header is where would I use header in this case? I think I would use header. I might not even use a header because there is no clear header, because yes, there is a navigation bar, but then yeah, there is no header that defines a page because all sections are sort of quite independent on their own. And I could define hero section as a header, but it's not really, okay. Could it be? Why not? You would have header, okay, that makes sense. So this would be a header because it does have a headline inside and then describes the page. I might be wrong on this one. I'm pretty bad at actually accessibility or defining HTML semantic tags because most of my websites, to be honest, don't have this semantic tags applied, and it's not a good idea. I'm just trying to get a good habit. So I would apply a header to this hero section, and all you have to do is just go into the settings and change the tag to header. That's it. That's all there is to be done. And another type of where is this? Yeah, another type of tag that we have is called main. Main defines the main content of a website. Main content of a site would be, for example, inside the article, this would make sense inside. So you would remove the navigation bar, remove the footer, and then everything else would be the main, right? A bit difficult for me to do that right now because I have navigation bar nested inside the hero section. So it's not really part of the main, the navigation bar, and I don't really have a main content as something that would define as main. Everything is quite same level as the different sections, so I'm not going to apply main in this case. But what I will apply is a section tag. Section defines a section in the document. The spec defines this as a thematic group of content, typically with a heading. So you can think of it as being like a chapter, which makes sense because we are already doing this by section, right? We already define breaking down our website web page in sections. So it makes sense to apply each of these sections the section tag. Section and section. We could also define different tags inside, but not in this case. There is not much we could actually add. We don't have like navigation links or anything like that. So nothing what would do inside here. And I think I'll just now define just a footer and that's it. And footer is quite easy because it has its own tag called footer. Footer doesn't have to be just the footer of the page. It can also be footer of a content or specific like a blog card or something like that. And I'm going to demonstrate that actually in a minute. So that's it. I'm going to publish this. And we're going to check how that tool sees the content. As you can see now, more has been added in here. Where's the other one? The original one only showed 3 landmarks. Here now we have 5 landmarks. And if we highlight all of them, we get another banner. I guess headers are being called as banners. See, I'm thinking now that banner is not a good idea for the hero section, and I'm probably gonna get rid of this. Where is the hero? It's not really a banner, right? So I would just take this navbar. Well, navbar is already defined as a banner, so we don't have to edit that. So we have the same thing, banner navigation, nothing here. Sections, actually, I don't think it highlights as landmarks sections because they are a bit more something to break it down so it doesn't really highlight. And we have content information, which is good. It has been added as and actually I forgot one more thing, because we have navigation links inside the footer. It is important to define them as well. So we have navigation links here, right? And if I had them together, so it's this and this. This is not a navigation link. This is something else. They are like contact information, but these 2 columns are navigation links. And if I had them in one group, then I would, it would be nice. It would be better probably, because then I would name these as, tag this as navigation. But since I don't have them in different, I cannot nest them either because they are flexbox and I kind of have to really mess up everything. So I think it's going to be quite fine if I just select each one and apply nav to it. And there is actually one more tag inside our HTML tags in Webflow, which defines contact information. And this is a good idea to define. This is called address, and address defines any contact information, be it emails, phone numbers, or anything like that. By default, it's going to make it italic, but we can override this by forcing the italics. It is right now regular, but we have to force it like this, and to make sure that it's now in blue and it's not going to be italic anymore. And let's publish this, and we'll check if this has been picked up by the extension. There you go. A lot better. Now it has navigation, and when screen reader enters this website, and when they come here, the screen reader will tell this, will announce it to the user saying that, okay, you are in navigation. That means this navigation will allow them to go through either to the different sections of the page or different pages of the website. All right, that's done with the home page. I want to show you one more with a blog post. So let's do the blog post. First, let's check how this blog post behaves without us applying anything. We have a banner, we have a navigation, nothing with the content. And we have, since the footer was a symbol, this was already carried here. And now all the footers are very well established with semantic tags. So inside the blog post, it's quite simple. In reality, we have we can use now the main content, because that represents main content of this document, because we have the navigation bar, we have the footer, and then we have the main, which is the main content of whatever the page says, right? So we can easily take this section and make this into main. Now we have few different containers inside, and within these containers we can use another very important tag called article. Now, article has to, this doesn't describe fully, defines an article in the document, but there is one more description of how to use article by the HTML5 convention and standards. So article has to make sense on its own, even if you take it outside of the page. So if you take article outside of the page and put it somewhere else, let's say if like Google grabs it, or like Flipboard, this app that gets content from different websites, grabs it, it has to make sense. So what you want to do here is define what's an article for you. Obviously, the headline, this information, the main image, and the content, that's all article. These could be included as well. The author block, not sure, could be. I don't think it's it wouldn't be a big deal if you don't include it, because it's well, I guess it will depend if you imagine it if some machine grabs this content out of your page, does this repeating author block needs to be there? And we can argue that sometimes it needs to be, sometimes it's not. But we also have this dynamic the HTML embed here, which is just commenting, which is not part of the article. It's something different. So we shouldn't include this inside the article. So what we would do here is we would need to rearrange things a little. So we have rich text, and then we have a comment wrapper. So we need to get this guy out of it. We would remove our comment wrapper outside, and we would add another container since it's being wrapped. Give this guy the same blog container tag class. Drop that inside. Okay, now our commenting feature is doing fine. And everything else now can go inside that article, but we need to wrap it in something. So what you do is you add another div block and move everything inside. This is not going to change the layout because this div block is not styled. It's just going to act as just empty div block that doesn't really do anything and doesn't really, unless you style it, obviously. So we can now take this empty div block. You don't have to give it a class or anything, and just change it to article. And now that makes sense. This is article, this is commenting, and that makes sense. This thing is, could this be? Before we move on to that. Now within article, we have a header, right? Because this describes some important information about the article. This describes the headline, the date when it was published, the author. So this part should be given a header tag. Excellent. This can be given a figure, right? So what was the figure? Figure is defines as self-contained content like illustrations, so images, diagrams, photos, etc. So we can apply figure element to this guy. It's especially important to apply it because we're not using image element here. We're just using a regular div block that has an image as a background. So in that case, it's even nicer to give it a figure element. And this is there's no such tag as body, so we don't have to apply that here. All right, everything. Oh, and actually this is footer, because this is, if we just look at the article on itself, we do have a header, then we have the main content, and then we have a footer that describes something else about the article, but it's not part of the article. So this is a great place to apply footer to this guy. Because it's not footer of the website, it doesn't have to be footer of the page. It can be footer of anything, footer of any section that you're defining. It can be a footer of a section, can be footer of a article, footer of main, but it cannot be footer of a header, for example. And block container, this could be set as one. There is this tag called aside. Aside usually defines content that is not part of the main content. Something like a side navigation bar. Don't have the example here, but usually when you have like a side, there will be like a navigation bar. Oh, one more example can be like a banner, like an interruption banner, like an ad. When you have a content, and if we had like embedded advertisement here or similar articles or something within, that will be a great way to use the side, because that way we are telling it that we are within the main article, we have some interruption or intermission that says that is not part of this article. So it's a great way to put this thing as a side. And we could do this on the commenting to tell that commenting is not really part of the main content, and it's not. Well, actually, I'm thinking it is commenting partly part of this content because it is attached to this. So yes, I would argue that we should keep this as it is, and we do not apply this to a side because it is part of this text, right? It is part of this blog post. It has, like for example, the footer is not part of this blog post or a navigation bar, and if we had some sidebar here, would not be part of this, but these comments are. And that's it. I think I've applied everything. Let's give this a publish, and let's see if any of our tags are now detected. This is what we have here. Give it a refresh. And all right, so now the main has been detected. It shows us the main. This is a great, what are these called? The screen readers and accessibility tools, they usually have different shortcuts. And shortcuts enable them, for example, when a person gets to a blog post, they could use a shortcut to jump to the main. And this will help them to ignore everything, so they don't have to, because the way these accessibility tools work is that you start from the tab and then it asks you, do you want to enter the page content? And you say yes, you click some buttons to enter it, then you go to the main content, and it starts from here and it says, okay, oh, here's a link and a logo or an image, and then it goes here, and then it tells now you're in navigation, and then it goes through this, and so on. So you don't want, it's just so time consuming to go one by one to every single link. So that's why they have shortcuts where you can say, okay, there is a main, do you want to jump to the main? Yes, and jump to the main. And that's a great way to skip all the other stuff that is not important, and the person can get right to the main content of the page. Article hasn't been highlighted by this tool. I guess this extension, or the way this extension judges, maybe they don't highlight articles, but still, it doesn't mean that whatever this guy doesn't highlight, that it's not going to be useful for screen readers. It will be, so make sure. This is just a small guide to help you out, so you can visualize that whatever changes you're making, it's actually doing something, and it's helpful, and you're not just blindly doing things. And this will also help you to identify different things. So yeah, that's actually I will show you one more for a blog grid just quickly. So here, obviously, the navigation bar, we already have that. We have the footer. Now we have the main, right? Where the main content is this section. This would become main in this case. And within this main, now we have header. These two guys would be header, and I don't have a div block for it, so we would have to nest this inside the div block, so give this as a header. And now what we would do with these cards is these cards would be articles. Because they are independent content on their own, they can be grabbed, and if you grab this card and put it somewhere else, it makes sense on its own, right? It has its own header, it has its own heading, the heading image, its own heading, its own paragraph, and its own text. So it's a great idea to assign this blog card. We can do this. So what you would have to do here is the link, because this is a link, it doesn't have that option, and collection item doesn't have that option either. So you're going to have to drop a div block and nest this block card inside that div block, so you can apply a tag to it. And actually, you would also apply this, not this, but this, a footer, because it's a footer of this article. And if we had a header here, which we don't actually have, we just have a heading, then we would apply a header to, that would make sense. But right now, because it's just a heading, applying header to the heading, it doesn't really do much, because headings are quite important for accessibility tools. So they always make sure to detect headings, and always make sure to use headings with these heading types, H1, H2, H3, because that's how accessibility tools detect where something is important and something is a heading. And that is it. That's it. Hope this was helpful. Cheers.